All right, so we're graphing in vertex form. Now, technically, this is actually the same form that we did yesterday. Yesterday was just a very simplified version of it. Now, let me give you the official vertex form. Vertex form is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Be scared, very scared. I'm doing all the scary lessons as we lead up to Halloween. Okay, so let me explain this to you. I should have highlighted it before because it's going to smear. Oh, it's not going to smear. Good pens. All right. All right, so we learned yesterday a little bit about this A thing. Do you remember that? What does A determine? A positive A means what? It opens up. It's a happy parabola. A negative A value means it opens down, which means it's a sad parabola. A parabola that opens up, the vertex is a minimum. A parabola that opens down, the vertex is a maximum. All that's still the same. What we had going on yesterday was we had a vertex of 0. Now let me tell you about this vertex form. When you have vertex form, your vertex is always h, comma, k. So do you see where h is? H is in the parentheses with the x, and k is outside. Now please notice something. The formula says minus h. Do you see that? Minus h, but my vertex is just plain h, which means what? Positive h. So my h value, I actually have to change the sign every time I take it out of the parentheses. Okay? K is positive in the formula, and it's positive up here, so K we don't worry about. We only worry about what's in the parentheses. Now yesterday, all of our vertexes were at 0, 0, so H was 0 and K was 0, which basically made it look very short and simple like it did on last night's homework. Tonight's equations, if you look at them, they're a little bit longer. Okay? So, these first 4 questions. Question number 1, the first thing I want to do is I want you to identify what the vertex is. So, in other words, what's my H value? H is right here. It looks like a negative 3. But when I take it out of the parentheses, I have to change the sign. K, I do not need to change the sign because I'm not taking it out of parentheses. So it's a positive 3 here. It's going to remain a positive 3. That's my vertex. Okay. From yesterday, what's my axis of symmetry? Remember, it's always x equals something. And it's x equals whatever the x value of your vertex is. So I like highlighting here that corresponds with that. That example to have all the same letter first. And then finally, would this one open up or down? How do you know? Since A is positive, we have a parabola that's going to open up like that. Yes? So when I had yesterday, I said min, max, and then a blank. This one is going to have a minimum. And that minimum value is always the y value of your vertex. So again, bad choice doing an example that has 3 and 3. So hopefully the highlighting helps you correspond what goes where. Okay? Let's look at number 2. What is the vertex in number 2? Positive 4, because I have to change the sign. Negative 3. Yes? What is my axis of symmetry? X equals 4. It must be an equation, and that seems really lame. But if it's not an equation, it's not a line. It's just a number. And your axis of symmetry is a line on your graph. Okay? So min, max. Does this one have a minimum value or a maximum value? How do you know? Since my a value is negative, we have one opening upside down. Therefore, I have a maximum value. And that maximum value is what? Negative 3. Negative 3 doesn't seem like a very maximum-ish type value, but it is in this case. All right? You try filling that information out for numbers 3 and 4. Find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, and the min-max info. Write it better. Min, max. Are you done?
Yes.
All right, what is my vertex in number 3? -1, -3. Now, things I'm going to be particular about. I'm telling you now that I am going to be particular about this. Your vertex must be in parentheses. Without parentheses, mathematically, it is not representing a point on a graph. Okay? Axis of symmetry, I must see the x equals, because like I said, without the x equals, you do not have the equation of a line. You just have a number. In this case, it would be x equals what for my axis of symmetry? -1. Does this one have a minimum or a maximum?
Maximum.
Because the negative means it's opening down. And that maximum value is -3. Again. You always have to change the sign of whatever you're pulling out of the parentheses. So H you always have to change the sign of. K you never change the sign of. H you always do. In general, and this will apply when we do one of the other forms coming up called intercept form, every time you take a number out of parentheses, you always change the sign of it. Always, 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 always. All right. All right, number 4, what's my vertex? -4, What is my axis of symmetry? X equals -4. Does this have a minimum or a maximum?
A maximum.
Because again, it's opening down, so it has a maximum value of 1. So far, so good? Okay. Now we're going to graph them.
Great.
The only difference, really, between yesterday and today was yesterday you always started with -2, -1, 0, 1, 2 because 0, 0 was your vertex, correct? The difference comes with the fact that you have a different vertex today. What is my vertex for this problem? 3, -2, right? Change the sign of this guy, leave the sign of that one.
Yes.
So what goes in the middle of my XY chart? Not 0, 0. 3, -2. My vertex always has to go in the middle of my XY chart. So what's that going to do? That's going to change the numbers that I have to put in my XY chart. So let me think about this for a minute. The 3 is in an X value, correct? 3, X, 3. Yeah? If I look at 3 on my x-axis, that's right here. Yes?
Yeah.
I need the 2 numbers closest to it on both sides. So I need 2 and 1 and 4 and 5. Do you see that? 2 and 1 and 4 and 5. So that I have 5 numbers in a row, counting consecutively, with that vertex value as the middle one. That's the hardest part of the problem. Because at this point, what do?
You You plug it?
You plug them in. And we learned yesterday that you're going to get a mirror image because of that symmetry thing. So whatever I get when I plug in 2 should be the same number I get when I plug in 4. And whatever I get when I plug in 1 should be the same that I get when I plug in 5. And if I remember that, and I know my vertex is in the middle, I can cut my work in half by only plugging in 2 values. So, let me plug these in. Now, these are a little bit more tricky to plug in. I have a 2, and then a parentheses, and then x, I'm going to plug in 1, minus 3, parentheses squared, minus 2. Do you see how I've got that typed in? Yours needs to look just like that. I hit enter, and I get... Now, just to prove my point, I'm going to go change that 1 to a 5 to show you that I still get 6 as my answer. How did I change that so quick? Remember from yesterday, you go back and you make sure that the number you're wanting to change is blinking. And if I want to plug in 2, I type 2. And I get 0. And just to show you that that mirror image does hold, I'm going to change that to a 4, and I still get 0. So that shows my mirror image. If for some reason I'm not getting that mirror image, the issue is that I don't have my vertex in the middle. Because as long as my vertex is in the middle, I will always have a mirror image. Okay, what do I do from here now that I have 5 points?
You graph them?
Graph them. 1, 6, 2, 0, 3, negative 2, 4, 0, and 5, 6. You see my points there? And then I just draw in my parabola. And again, as much as I can, try not to make it a V. I know sometimes they get really tall and steep, but try and stick to that U shape as much as possible.
It's obviously negative.
Well, I need to fill in my things. I have a vertex I need to fill in, an axis of symmetry.
Like 3 points, 3, 4, 5 points per problem from the test.
Yeah, easily. Because there's lots you have to do, so you need to get credit for everything you have to do, right? You need to be able to get credit for identifying the vertex, identifying the axis of symmetry, doing your XY chart, plotting the points. You got to get credit for all that. Okay? All right. So my vertex was what? 3, negative 2?
Yeah.
What's my axis of symmetry? I didn't draw it in. I need to draw it in.
3.
And what's my rule about drawing it in? Different color, highlighter, or if you don't have those, dotted line. Cannot be a solid line, because if you put it as a solid line, you're saying it's physically a part of the parabola. And it's not. It's just a reference to the parabola. So your axis of symmetry just goes vertically through your vertex. What's the equation of that axis of symmetry? X equals 3. Do I have a maximum or a minimum?
A minimum.
And what is that minimum value?
Negative 2.
You see the lowest point is at negative 2. It's amazing what happens when you're awake. Clearly. Questions about that one? Now I just kind of want to work with you through as many of these as I have time to work through with them, to make sure that you kind of get fluent with the process. Okay? Because it's the same process every time. You ready for number 6?
Yes.
All right. I think I'm going to change colors so that I don't get my work mixed up. All right. Vertex. What is my vertex in this case?
1, negative 2. Negative.
Scoot it over. Positive 2, negative 4, right? Because I changed the sign of what's in the parentheses. I don't change the sign of the other one. You okay with that? Okay. So now I set up my XY chart. And how do I set up my XY chart?
You put the vertex in the middle.
You put the vertex in the middle. And you shake it all about. Exactly. How do I come up with the numbers around there?
Consecutively count.
You can consecutively count. You can look here and say, okay, there's 2. I need 1 and 0, and then 3 and 4. You can use your hand and say, if this is 2, I need 3 and 4. And from there, count down one way and up the other way so that you have 5 numbers with that vertex right in the middle.
Yeah.
I want to see all 5 numbers. Okay, that'll give you a good picture of what's going on. Now what do I do? Out of curiosity, before I plug it into the calculator, could I fill out this information?
Yes. Yeah. Did you say no?
I can fill it out without a graph, can't I?
Yeah.
I did 4 times up here. I better be able to. What's my vertex?
2 negative 4.
What's my axis of symmetry going to be?
X equals 2.
And what's my, am I going to have a maximum or a minimum?
Maximum.
Most likely a maximum. Well, yes, it's going to be a maximum because my A value is negative. I can wait till after to fill this out if I want to. That maximum value is going to be negative 4. Now watch this. I'm going to go backwards. If my axis of symmetry is 2, I'm going to go ahead and draw it in at 2. See what I did there? I know. I'm that confident that that's going to go right through my vertex.
Why?
Amazing.
Why exactly?
Because it always goes through your vertex. And because I know my vertex is 2, negative 4. So if that's my vertex, there it is going through my vertex. Okay. So I'm going to plug in. Yes, I posted a new assignment. I scheduled for it to be posted. That's your homework for tonight. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to plug this in. Do you notice that there's a negative sign before the parentheses?
Yes.
There needs to be a negative sign before the parentheses in my calculator, too. So negative parentheses. By the way, I'm sure you know this already. This is not a negative sign on this calculator. Most of these calculators, you have to use this as your negative sign. If you try and use this as your negative sign, it will say error. It will say error. Okay, I'm going to start out plugging in 0. Whoops, too many parentheses. 0 minus 2, close my parentheses, squared, minus 4. Any guesses as to what I'm going to get? Good answer. Negative 8.
Wait, why'd you put a 0?
Because that's the first number on my XY chart. Right? From when I had my 2 and I counted down and I counted up. Now, what other value should also get me negative 8? The 4 should also get me negative 8 because of that mirror image thing, right? Now, I can verify that just by arrowing back and changing that 0 to a 4, and there's my negative 8. Since I know I have a mirror image, I'm pretty confident that the next one is also going to be a mirror image. So let's go back and change that 4 to, what number should I plug in next? 1? Negative 5? And this one will also be negative 5 because of that mirror image. What do I do now? You graph it. Plot those points. 0, negative 8, 1, negative 5. There's my vertex that I plotted earlier. 3, negative 5, and 4, negative 8. And there is my parabola. And in case I was curious here, remember we were hesitant on whether it was a max or a min. Now I can clearly see it's a max. So you can fill it out either before or after. Questions about that?
No.
It's really the exact same process. The only difference is setting up your XY chart. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what I want to do is I want to pass out your homework, and I think tomorrow maybe we'll do these last 2 problems.
For notes?
for notes.
Are we gonna be going
Okay.
the same thing tomorrow as well? Or?
Depends. Were you awake today?
Yes, I was.
All right. Happy studying.